will Kyle Shanahan ever win a Super Bowl with the 49ers?
Mm-hmm.
I'll throw that question to you, and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. But what do you think? Is Shanahan going to climb to the top of the mountain with the Niners, or is he going to fall short of his ultimate goal?
It's trending to a no. Uh, right now, and it's not. We just have to go with history, right? It's not even about Kyle specifically as the man or the coach, but what happens in situations like this is that very few teams hold on to their guy that can operate the team, keep development, keep the team relevant, but not get over the hump. Now, this would be a good social experiment because Kyle probably would be one of the first to kind of break that trend. But you have guys that get moved out of the door, like a Tony Dungy, like a Andy Reid, right? Where these are guys where they built their programs and their regimes from the ground up. They were very hands on, but their voice got stale. And it started becoming a factor of like, we cannot win a Super Bowl with this man. Now, that was on a different landscape of the NFL at the time, in my opinion, where Super Bowls had a lot more weight at that time, where winning the Super Bowl was a lot more grandiose. There was a lot more cachet with winning a Super Bowl. Where I really feel like going to a Super Bowl now, there's a lot more pageantry involved, and if you're if you're enough to just be in the orbit of that pageantry, I feel like there's a lot of owners and organizations that feel like that's kind of good enough, right? And we'll find a way to spin it. We'll find a way to create the narrative. But the bottom line is that we want the money, right? And I feel like competitively, in the landscape of where the Niners are geographically, there's really nobody around to really challenge them. And if the Niners stay viable and they win, uh, I don't necessarily see ownership really pressing on Kyle to, win a Super Bowl or get fired, right? Because really the beast is too big to fail. And for that reason, I feel like there will be a problem with Kyle winning a Super Bowl here because teams are getting better. The gap is closing. Every year there's a new shift in power of who are the most dominant and who are the better teams in the NFL. We have yet to see how we shake up in that mix up once free agency is done and we get past all of the regular off season and draft and things of that nature. But uh I feel like if Kyle's biggest issue is that he needs people around him to help to elevate him to where he needs to go. And his coaching staffs are becoming very transient, where people are not staying a long time. There's nobody there really kind of helping Kyle, but more or less elevating their own career under the success of what Kyle and John has built. So yeah, I don't see him winning a Super Bowl because he needs help. He needs true help. He needs a mentor that is young enough or old enough to actually be on the staff that he'll listen to. He needs somebody who's young enough under him that is as fiery as he was. He needs to learn how to deal with his younger self and understand what it's like to have to corral somebody who really wants to run their offense a better way so you yourself can grow new skills as a leader. And those are just some of the things I touched on this on a show earlier this week. I believe there should be three elements in every man's life. I believe that you should have peers around you to push you so you guys can inspire each other. I believe that you should have mentees under you to hold you to the standard so you can pass down what you've learned so you can always be held accountable. And I believe that you should have a mentor above you so you can aspire to be the better person that you are. And I just feel as though that being around Kyle from this perspective, not just his whole career, but him being our head coach for going on 8 seasons now, and what we know, it's a little disjointed, and I feel like we're seeing it come out in the wash in these wins and losses. He's not losing because of football now; it's because of the man. He's losing. He's losing because of who he is as a person. He needs to change.
Um, It's interesting. I mean, the comparison with Shanahan that always comes up is Andy Reid, because Andy Reid was so good in Philly, had about a 14-year run there, won double digits, what, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 times in 14 years, and then had an 8-8 year and a 4-12 year, and they kicked him to the curb, and he went to Kansas City, and you know people think, oh, he went to Kansas City and he just immediately won Super Bowls. He actually coached 6 seasons in Kansas City, almost Kyle Shanahan's entire tenure in San Francisco, before he won the Super Bowl in Kansas City.
Mhm.
So I just really believe that it comes down to, I mean, one, do you think Kyle's a good offensive coach? I do.
Yes.
And then it comes down to, do you have your quarterback? And you guys all know how I feel. I feel like they have their quarterback. So I think he is going to get it done. I
Mhm.
think the only wrinkle on this where I think it's kind of debatable is the in San Francisco with the 49ers. Like, I think Shanahan's a young man whose scheme works, it produces points, and he's a coaching lifer. He's going to do it for another 20 years, and I think he's going to get a Super Bowl. The question is, what kind of run does he have here in San Francisco? Does it end in San Francisco before he gets it done? And it could, but Jed has had such bad luck hiring coaches that I think he's going to be
Yeah, I don't
very,
see
very,
the
very
only
cautious.
way the only way that Kyle would ever get fired here, in my opinion, is if they miss the playoffs. Because it is the bottom line. And I don't believe that Jed is the sole I don't believe the buck stops with Jed. I believe the buck stops with Dr. York. Um and
Missing the playoffs is definitely possible.
I don't think so, not yet.
You don't think so? I mean, look at all the depth in the NFC and the division. You never know. Um,
Nah, not yet. Brock is going to have a full off season. That's going to be. I think people are going to be surprised how Brock is, how much Brock has improved. Brock's going to have a full season without being hurt. We got the Jawan situation out of the way. The offensive line hopefully is going to get retooled. We got our depth back with the defensive line. I, I don't think we'll be as good as we were last year, but the playoffs, I think we'll easily get into the playoffs.
um, Reed had a 583 win percentage in Philly when they dumped him. Shanahan right now has got a 557 win percentage, but he's also had 3 years in a row, 12-5 Super Bowl appearance, 13-4 NFC title game appearance, 10-7 NFC title game appearance. And then, of course, the one 2020 weird year, COVID year.
Mhm.
But if you go back to 2019, once again, excuse me, double digit season, 13-3, lose the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
He's been knocking on the door. Now he's got his quarterback. I think he'll continue to knock on the door for the next 4 or 5 years, and I think they're bound to win one. That's all. I don't know if they'll ever get into a run where they win 2 and 3 and 4, and a Walsh type run, or some kind of epic dynasty. But I think they'll find a way to get their one,
Well,
at
let me ask you
least
this.
in this mix with the Niners, before they show them the door.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you feel like, because I floated this, do you feel like we talk about the window, right? And the window is, I feel like the window is a nod to one championship, right? And because of that, we keep, when we don't win, right? What we keep talking about is reloading, right? It was the revenge tour, then it was Quest for Six, then it was one more ride. I mean, Jesus Christ, we're like Fast and the Furious at one point. Like, and all of these titles that we had for basically virtue signaling towards we're not done with the mission. But after, when you look at the teams that we've had from 2019 to now, right? One could almost say not only are we not winning the Super Bowl, the one Super Bowl that we covet so much, but we've erred on the side of wasting a dynasty. This team is ridiculously good. And they've been really good at times when the league has not been as good. and we still
But can
haven't
you,
got it done.
but not to interrupt, Coach, but can you call him a dynasty when Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback? That's the only thing.
If they won,
I hear you, but I mean, like, how many dynasties are led by a quarterback as limited as Jimmy Garoppolo?
well, it's not. Well, wait a minute. We got to the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right.
Okay,
I mean, so
so
which
there's
is
that.
impressive. That's impressive.
Right.
But you know what
So
I'm
there's
saying? At
that.
the end of the day, like go through all the dynasties in the history of the NFL.
Hmm.
Green Bay. Green Bay had, Bart Starr, Terry Bradshaw in Pittsburgh. The Niners had Joe and then Steve. Patriots had Brady. And then all of a sudden we'd be like, well, and then the Niners had this dynasty with Jimmy Garoppolo.
No, but it was wasted. It was wasted from a standpoint of the team was good enough to win.
Yeah.
Like
It was
that's
a
what I'm
great
talking
team.
about.
It was a
Like
great
these
team with
great
kind of
teams.
an okay
Like
quarterback.
I understand that we can hone in on the quarterback and honestly say that when you look at dynasties, you can look at quarterbacks that were great, right? But there are also quarterbacks that stayed the course and helped elevate the team. You could talk about Terry Bradshaw with Pittsburgh. He was an average quarterback that was there with a great
Before,
team,
yeah.
kept them going, right? So
I
I
mean,
understand that
he was pretty freaking great at the end, but yeah, no, totally. He was not a. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, but he's a Hall of
he's a
Famer
Hall
because
of
of the
Famer,
win.
but I wasn't around for Terry Bradshaw, but I've watched a lot of that film.
It was rough. The
It was,
the
yeah.
first
I'm
couple
not gonna
years were a
disrespect
little
the
rough.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was developmental, right? So,
he had a huge arm, and he
mhm,
wasn't there yet.
yeah, exactly. He still had a ways to go at that time, but they were still winning, right? They
Yeah,
still made a way to take advantage of what they had in great teams. So all of this time you could look at all of the time of us being good this long, right? Like the you could look at the Bills. The Bills lost 4 times in a row. You could say, "Oh, they just missed their Super Bowl. They really wanted their Super Bowl." But truthfully, if you got a team that can knock on the door that consistently, that's a missed dynasty. That's not just one team that fumbled. You don't just accidentally make it back to the Super Bowl 4 times, right? The same way you don't just accidentally just make it back to the NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl 3 to 4 times and twice within 5 to 6 years. Like this was a very good team where the possibilities of what we were as a team is multiple Super Bowls, not just fighting just to get one. Like we've been very good for a while. Not just this wasn't just a team that, all right, okay, I can see if we got together in 2019, we caught lightning in the bottle. We went and drafted him. I mean, we went and traded for Emmanuel Sanders in the middle of the season, and then boom, like we're in cap hell the next year. We kind of just had to throw it all together to push for that year. No, we finished in 2019 and we're galvanized like we are here to stay. This team is ready. We're not going anywhere. We're here to build. We're young. We're going to pay these guys. And we were right in some instances. These guys in 2019, they were not the best in their positions in the league. Dre Greenlaw was not the best, one of the best linebackers in the league. Neither was Fred. These guys were growing and ascending. And if you look at the team thus far, everything has worked but that quarterback situation. And you have to look at it and say that it was a waste. It's a wasted dynasty. The Trey Lance pick, us being in cap hell for 3 years in a row without having a first round pick, us even making the decision to go after Trey because Kyle was upset that Jimmy didn't want to play past his injuries in 2020. Like you got to go back and kind of look at the decisions made and how things went. And then we lucked out with Brock. Even in getting Brock, we still got bounced out with the Eagles. He comes back off of a hurt year, and we're the healthiest that we've ever been, not just in the league, but from our own standard, we're being one of the most historically injured teams in the league. And we still didn't get it done. I'm just talking about how it's going to be talked about and how other people outside of us are going to look at all of it. And it's a missed opportunity. It's dreams deferred. It's not just one Super Bowl, in my opinion.
yeah. No, I hear you. I just don't think I look at the Niners as Shanahan and a really good defense, and he hasn't had his quarterback. And now this year he had his quarterback, and they got really, really close, and they lost to Mahomes in Kansas City. Now, 3 years from now, with Shanahan and this defense and their quarterback, if they continue to fall short, then I'll say wasted dynasty. but I can't call the Niners a dynasty. To me, you have to win one, and you have to have a great quarterback. If you win one, you have a great quarterback, then you're in that dynasty group. They had a good defense. They had a really good defense, and they had Shanahan, and they got close. But at the end of the day, I mean, they messed up on Trey. They messed up by going with Jimmy. They put way too much on Jimmy, and then it was like there was all of this elephant in the room was that they didn't trust Jimmy, and that's like that 19 run to the Super Bowl where they just ran the ball. And I think even Jimmy knew by the time they got to the Super Bowl, man, these guys they don't really believe in me. And then we kind of saw his failings in the Super Bowl. And then, of course, he gets hurt and the Trey Lance thing and all the commitment there. Now they're finally beyond the commitment draft wise as far as what they gave up for Lance. They have their quarterback. We'll see if they have a defense. I think the next 5 to 7 years will tell us dynasty and that didn't do its thing or not, because at least now, I mean, and we don't know. I don't know if they're going to have a great defense. They've had a very good defense. I don't know if that very good defense thing's going to continue, but if they somehow have a very good defense going forward, and you've got Shanahan, and you've got Purdy, and they keep falling short, then I'm with you. But right now, I would say just a very good defense and Shanahan and some bad decision-making at quarterback. And they just haven't been good enough. They haven't been the best team. In any of these years, they haven't really been the best team.
So you mean to tell me that we weren't the best team this year?
I mean, no, I don't think so. They scraped by in the playoffs and got beat by a better team with a better coach and a better quarterback in the Super Bowl. I don't think they were the best team. I think they were among the best teams. I actually kind of think that Detroit had way more talent than the Niners. I mean, they just were a little bit before their time. And that's why I think Detroit's going to be a bear next year. And Green Bay, kind of the same, a lot of rookies. They leaned on a lot of young guys, including a very young quarterback who made a very young quarterback mistake in the fourth quarter that ultimately ended the game. But I mean, the Niners are among the best teams, and they'll continue to be among the best teams. But that's why I'm like pushing hard for a Surtain or for one more move, because they do need, in my mind, they either need some great trade or some great draft pick to vault them back up. Because I think you're absolutely right. In 2019, they had Dre Greenlaw, they had Fred Warner, but those guys were great, but they were still in ascending to be great. But they were great players that they had drafted. They need a couple more great players that they draft, either on the offensive side of the ball, receiver line, on the defensive side of the ball, corner, D-line, linebacker. They need a couple more great players. And if they get if you say to me, why did Kansas City win? They had more great players. McDuffie was awesome. Snead, who we'll talk about here in a minute because he just got traded. He was awesome. Chris Jones is awesome. Mahomes and Kelsey really stood up. And they've got some of the NFL's most incredible talent. Now the Niners do too, but in my mind, the Niners are at least two great players away from being in that dynasty range of like, oh my God, it's them and then everybody else. Like, you gave the Niners a dominating corner. Well, I don't think you think the Niners are head and shoulders better than the other teams in the league? I don't.
I thought we were head and shoulders better than the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Well, I didn't. I mean, the Chiefs had Mahomes. I watched NFL Network the night before the Super Bowl. They had 15 different guys making predictions. 13 of them took the Chiefs. NFL
Larry,
Network.
whoa.
Maurice Jones-Drew, Daniel Jeremiah,
Larry,
all these guys.
Are you just trying to make a show right now? Or are you being serious?
I'm
Larry.
Coach,
all
find me somebody
season,
credible.
Larry.
Find me somebody.
Larry,
Find me somebody who's big time in football who picked the Niners to beat the Chiefs. I don't.
Larry,
Almost everybody
Larry,
picked the
all
Chiefs.
all season long, you and I have been talking. Last year, we were talking about how we had the best roster in football. Like all season long, bro. Like now, all of a sudden, you're talking about
But with discernible
Niners
weaknesses.
better than.
But I mean, you admit it. You yourself said the Niners have a really weak offensive line. Well, guess what
Yeah.
happened? In a major moment in the Super Bowl, that really weak offensive line looked really weak. No, I'm just saying. The Niners are among the best teams in football, but I mean, they didn't. That we've all watched teams in the playoffs. That was not like a we're the best, we're kicking ass kind of a playoff run. They barely got by Green Bay at home. They barely got by Detroit at home. I mean, they were so a lot of people thought they were fortunate to be in the Super Bowl, and then they were the favorite, but
Larry,
that
did
was
you
kind
feel
of
like we were fortunate to be in the Super Bowl?
I never felt great about the Super Bowl. I never felt great about it. I just didn't. They weren't playing that well. They were going up against the team that had the better defense and the better quarterback. I was hopeful, man. I mean, I wanted it. I was in
All right.
Vegas,
So what
but
would we need?
I
What
was
would we
scared
need?
shitless.
What would we need on this team for you to feel like we're one of just no holes on the team? Because that's not
No, but
realistic.
well, you're always going to have some holes. I mean, heck,
Right.
you're going with Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott at defensive tackle right now. Those guys are not stars.
I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about the team that we went into the Super Bowl with.
Your center was a street free agent. Your right guard was a combo of a fourth round pick and a free agent anybody could have had for nothing. Your right tackle was a fifth round pick. I think you were right when you said, there was concerns about the offensive line. I never really fought it all year because I really kind of agreed. And then
So you just let me
sure enough,
fall on the sword. So
well,
I
no,
never
no. I
really
mean,
fought it.
I wanted it. I mean, I wanted the 49ers to win the Super Bowl badly. We've been waiting, man. I mean, come on. I mean, I was there for 81. But for the younger fans, man, I really wanted to see them. Anybody in their 30s has yet to really see the Niners win a Super Bowl. So I badly wanted to see them win it. But I acknowledge to you and to Grant and to Jesse and to Vish and to others that your guys' primary concern of the offensive line not being good enough was a legitimate concern. And I think that's why, like where we're at right now, Coach, I think that one of the things I'd be tempted to do would be to just devote this entire draft to, upgrading that offensive line. Because if this Niner team could get maybe one piece on defense, maybe one more rusher, maybe one more corner, something along those lines, and rebuild the offensive line into something big time, I love their chances. I think this is the draft to do it. Now, I don't know if I love their chances this year, but I love their chances of answering this question that we've entitled the show. Will Shanahan win a Super Bowl with the Niners? I think if he invests smartly in his offensive line in this draft and maybe gets a piece or two on D, I think they can win it. I think they're good to go. I love their chances.